Superhero stories have had a chokehold on comics since they came out in the late, 1930s? And since then, that chokehold has spread to TV and movies. And there's nothing wrong with that. Who doesn't love a new good superhero story? But that's kind of the thing, though, is that these stories aren't new anymore. We keep getting the same stories about the same people over and over and over again, and it's getting to the point where it's not that enjoyable. And in my opinion, if I'm going to make a new superhero story, it would be just that, a new story that a majority of people in the world haven't heard before. There's one superhero that comes to mind right now that she was new on the scene, and it was a concept that people hadn't really thought of before, but the second she came out, that was immediately slapped down by one of the big corporations out there, and he got rid of the superhero for, seemingly forever, and no one really talked about why. And it's kind of infuriating for me, because for me, I read this story and it was life-changing. And so it's a story that I want to talk about. This is a superhero that I want the world to know, because they should. And before we get started, if you couldn't tell by the title of this video, don't be pointing fingers at Marvel or DC, because they're not the ones that got rid of this superhero. The villain of today's story is, in fact, Hooters. Let's talk about one of the best comics I've ever read, and that's this one right here, Hallie the Hooters Girl. I'm sure some of you guys have heard of this, but I'm also fairly positive a good majority of the world hasn't, because Cabbage Comics released Hallie the Hooters Girl back in 1998, and the second it was released, Hooters slapped him with a lawsuit. Because, despite it being a Hooters Girl comic, Cabbage Comics didn't get permission from Hooters to use their name. And I get it. They used the name without permission. I understand the lawsuit. But this comic is a masterpiece. So clearly, the people at Hooters didn't read it. Because after reading it, why wouldn't you want this to represent your brand? This book starts off establishing our main character, Hallie, a blonde, big, plot-driven party girl who woke up late and is now late for work. So she gets dressed really quick, heads to work, and she finds out that she has a catering gig at the local Air Force base. And it's really important that they get there on time, so they load up the van as fast as they can and head out. Hallie, having been late for work, didn't get a chance to eat breakfast. So Hallie goes to the back of the van, picks up a chicken wing, and right in that moment, as she's about to take her first bite, the van collides with a septic truck, and the wing sauce gets on her right as the sewage from the septic truck seeps in through the sunroof above and gets all over her. And the combined mixture of the Hooters wing sauce and sewage changed Hallie's life forever, though she doesn't know that at the time. The police show up, the firefighters show up, the truck driver, he was escorted to the hospital, but all of the Hooters girls and Hallie, they were all fine. So they hopped back in the van and went to their catering gig. So the girls get to the Air Force base, and Hallie is immediately like, yo, well, where's the bathroom at? I need to freshen up. which, fair. She was just covered in sewage. She goes to the bathroom, and this is where the story starts to get really interesting. This is where it picks up. While Holly's in the bathroom, terrorists take over the banquet hall of the Air Force Base, and they've taken everyone hostage except for the Hooters girls, who are still doing their job catering, which is, totally fine. Holly comes out of the bathroom, and facing away from her is a terrorist with a gun. So she, of course, freaks out and goes to hide behind the nearest plant. And not knowing what to do, this is when her transformation happens. Hallie, the Hooters girl, or I guess Hallie, the girl that worked at Hooters, turns into the superhero, Hallie, the Hooters girl. There's this, big transformation that happens, and then she starts just wiping out these terrorists while saying these super cool, amazing, well-written one-liners that definitely don't, date this as a 90s comic. She says things like, "Time to spread some lead," and "I'm a total pain in the brass." And the best one-liner of all, "I'm Hallie, your Hooters girl, and I'm here to serve you trouble in a tank top." She annihilates these terrorists, and at one point she's just straight up throwing chicken wings at them, just non-stop, and she saves the day. But that is all we saw of Hallie, the Hooters girl. So, Hooters, if you're watching, let me give you some advice. Bring Hallie back.